Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shuchem l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Susan Abramson, coming to you from the sanctuary of Temple Shalom Emeth in Burlington, Massachusetts. We are here right in the middle of another COVID huge spike, and so we've had to go back to our virtual services for the month of January at least, but we are doing everything in our power to bring some meaning and some spiritual uplift and connectivity to all of you, and because it's so very important for us to feel connected with each other and with our faith during this very difficult period. And this week's Torah portion, Bo, talks about the end of the 10 plagues and how even Pharaoh couldn't take it anymore with all the plagues, and it finally allowed the Israelites to leave. And you're going to be learning more about that in our Dvar Torah this week, which I'm very excited is going to be given by Ben Einsidler, who's our religious school director and a rabbinical student at Hebrew College. And this evening we are also embellishing our service. Our Cantorial soloist Ben Silver is going to be joined by Alistair Lyons, our most recent bar mitzvah student who has a beautiful voice and joined us recently for a Shabbat service where he led a lot of the singing along with Ben. So all of that makes this service extra special, and I hope you find meaning and spiritual renewal on this Shabbat.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. V'hishtakavu Le'ad Kosho. We'd like to do another song for you, with you, and this one is called Shiru Ladonai, otherwise known as Shir Chadash, a new song. That's what that means, and you'll find words in the back of your book. I think it's page 648. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. I will sing a new song unto God. Right.
And now we're going to continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles, which you may find on pages 120 and 121. I'd like to invite Harriet Lyons, Alistair's mother, to join him in lighting the Shabbat candles for us this evening.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav b'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen, 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 amen.
And now that we've welcomed the light of Shabbat, we're going to continue by welcoming the Shabbat bride with Lecha Dodi on page 138.
Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela.
Shamor v'zachor v'diburecha yishmiyanuhem b'miuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad v'shemu tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, kiva ore, kumi ori, uri, shira beheri, kivod Adonai alai digla. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Last verse. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala gam b'simcha u'zahola tov emunei am sigula boi chala lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat mikabela. B'nei Shabbat mikabela.
And now that we've welcomed the Shabbat bride, we're going to continue with the next section of our service, the Shema and Its Blessings, which you may find on page 146. Please rise if you are able. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Va'ed.
Page 148. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim bechokma poteach she'arim uvitvuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla Golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Top of page 149 together. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 150.
Ahavat olam beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu lemahadita Otanu lemahadita Al ken Adonai Eloheinu bishachvenu uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach bedivrei Toratecha uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed ki hem chayinu v'yorech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla nege yomam v'layla V'yahavatcha al tahasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev Amo Yisrael Ohev Amo Yisrael
Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Page 152 and 153, we continue with the Shema, the watchword of our Jewish faith. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We continue with the Via Havta on page 154. Via Havta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uletecha b'derech u'shachbecha u'vkumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha Lema'an tizkeruhu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emeth.
And now we're going to continue with Mi Chamocha, the song the Israelites sang when they crossed the Red Sea to freedom from Pharaoh's grip. We didn't go over this one, but I bet you know it. On page 158.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Ready? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'chodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'chodesh. No ra, oh say, no ra, oh say, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Malchutecha ra'u v'necha. Okay, Hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ve'eli anu li'amalu, ve'eli anu li'amalu. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed.
And we now continue with the Hashkivenu prayer on page 160. The Hashkivenu is the prayer in which we thank God for creating a shelter of peace over us, which is something that we all need. It seems every week the idea that God creates this shelter of peace that kind of envelops us and protects us against all the issues that we have in our lives, all the issues that we have in our world. So we continue with that on page 160.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom והעמידנו שומרים לחיים, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרים חיים. ושמור צאתנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרים לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרים לחיים.
Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162, we continue with the Vishamru prayer. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Now we continue with the next section of our service, the Tefillah, which you may find on page 164. This is a section of the service where we pray directly to God, thanking God for being the God of our ancestors, the God who brings us strength, and the God who brings us peace. Please rise if you are able.
Anananananana Adonai, Anananananana Svatai Tiftach, Anananananana Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Anananananana Adonai, Anananananana Svatai Tiftach, Anananananana Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Anananananana Adonai, Anananananana Svatai Tiftach, Anananananana Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Anananananana Adonai, Ananananana Sakai Tika Ananananana Ufi Yagi Tehilateha Ananananana Adonai Ananananana Sakai Tika Ananananana Ufi Yagi Tehilateha.
Continue with the vote on page 166.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, v'zocher chasei avot v'imahot, u'mevi geula livnei v'neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. Page 168. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומפטיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol.
We continue with Shalom Rav, a song for peace, on page 178. Please be seated.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasih Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasih Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasih leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasih leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasihim Leolam. Tasihim Leolam. Tasihim Leolam.
Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We now continue with our Mishaber, Get Well prayer on page 371. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. This evening we think in particular of Sheila Haron, Marvin Weiner, Stephen Sadowski, Gina Rippon, Sandy Hoffman, Jerry Faulkner, Michael Nussbaum, Harav Miriam Simcha, Bat David Vanili. And at this time, if there are others you'd like us to keep in our hearts and our minds when we prepare to recite the Mishaber, Get Well prayer, you may say their names aloud. We're also thinking of everybody in our country, the hundreds and thousands of millions of people right now who are suffering with COVID. We're also thinking about all of us who are under a tremendous amount of stress and we just can't be ourselves. We don't know what the future will bring. We all feel like we're on the rapids trying to just get through every day, experiencing up and downs and during these winter months, being particularly susceptible to depression and loneliness and isolation. So this Mishaber this evening is for all of us as well. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for all of our health to be restored and all of our strength to be revived. May God swiftly send all of us a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Mishaber avotinu Mikor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotinu mikor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
And now, in addition to thinking about all of those and all of us who are in need of healing, we also are commanded on this Shabbat, on every Shabbat, to think about everything that we're grateful for. Our Jewish tradition tells us that on Shabbat we're not supposed to think about our problems, we're only supposed to think about all of the blessings God has given us. And so it's time for each of you, everybody watching this, to think about what particular blessings do you feel that you have in your life right now? What good things have happened during the past week? Thinking on a larger level, what in general are you grateful for in your life? For health and family blessings, a job, something good happening to members of your family, members of your community, something positive that's happening in response to this COVID crisis. And I wanted to particularly think about our blessing in our temple Shalom Emeth community. We're really blessed to have a wonderful, wonderful community and congregation full of people who really, truly care about each other, who reach out to each other. We could easily be falling apart right now. We could be at each other's throats. We could be experiencing a lot of dissension and just difficulty on an interpersonal level, but instead we're really coming together and supporting each other in every way possible. So I am blessed for our congregation. on this Shabbat. I'm also blessed by our staff. We've got such a wonderful religious school director, Ben Einsidler, who's speaking with us this evening, and we've got our Cantorial Soloist, Ben Silver. We've got a wonderful new administrator, Liz Jimenez. We've got a great temple board who are all on the same page and also pulling together to help us get through this crisis. So on this Shabbat, I'm really, really grateful for everybody, both professional staff and all the congregants of our community. And I hope more and more people join us to be part of our wonderful, caring community. So with all of that, we are now going to continue with the Shehechianu, thanking God for enabling us to reach this special moment.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh
We now pause for a moment of silent prayer. And now we continue with the singing of Oseh Shalom, another prayer for peace, on page 180. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening, Ben Einsidler, who's our religious school director, as well as a third-year student, rabbinical school student at Hebrew College. And it's been a pleasure for me to be working with Ben over these past 2 years. This is his second year as our religious school director and our Dalit teacher, or the teacher for our oldest kids. And Ben had the unenviable job of coming to us right in the middle of the pandemic. So last year our school had to go virtual. So not only did he have to be the director of our school, but he had to figure out how to do religious education on Zoom, which is extremely difficult and challenging. So, but we had a wonderful year last year thanks to his leadership, and We're having a great year this year. We were able to have our first semester in person, and now we're having to transition back, which he's had to take the lead on, back to Zoom for the time being. So not only has he been a great director and an inspiring teacher for our kids, but he's also been an inspiring teacher for our adults as well. And he's going to be taking on more and more responsibility for things in our community towards the end of this year and next year as well. So it's a pleasure for me to now introduce Ben, who's going to talk about this week's Torah portion. Take it away, Ben.
Shabbat Shalom. You may be familiar with a particular episode from the TV show Friends. It involves the main characters moving a large couch up several flights of stairs in their New York apartment building, with one character repeatedly yelling at his friends to pivot as they maneuver around. I couldn't help thinking of this yet again as we continue to exercise flexibility around the ongoing pandemic. Once again, our collective situation feels grim, and we look forward to better, healthier days ahead. Resilience and hope have been hallmarks of Jewish peoplehood going all the way back to our time as slaves in Egypt. Strikingly, the Israelites continue to hope and pray for redemption, even as their lives are embittered as slaves to Pharaoh. This duality of both acceptance of the status quo and hope in the future is present in Parshat Bo, which we read this week. But hope can sometimes only come after a moment of frustration. I'm reminded of Purim 2 years ago, in March of 2020. My classmates and I at Hebrew College had gathered to celebrate the holiday in Newton. There were no regular classes that day. Instead, we held morning services together. In our Purim costumes, I was dressed as a rock star, read the Megillah, and then gathered for a potluck lunch. It was a fabulous way to spend the day. After lunch, though, things took a turn. We were informed that campus was closing indefinitely, and that we should clean out our cubbies and take all of our books and materials home. The coronavirus pandemic, as we were calling it then, had finally hit home. After a couple of days of uncertainty when no classes were held, we moved to classes on Zoom. We eventually worked out the kinks, learned how to best utilize technology and our precious little personal time, and subsequently spent the vast majority of last school year on Zoom. A moment of frustration and uncertainty had led to a situation of at least stasis and hope. I remember thinking back on that March day, it's just temporary. We'll be back in a week. It's just an overly cautious safety measure. Now, nearly 2 years later, and having returned to fully in-person classes last semester, we find ourselves back to relying on technology. Zoom services, Zoom religious school, Zoom doctor's appointments. As Yogi Berra famously said, it feels like deja vu all over again. Seesawing between despair and hope and continuing to pivot can take a lot out of you. I admit that this has been discouraging for me personally. It can be hard to simply acknowledge reality in some cases, to see through our denial or disbelief and acknowledge that things simply are what they are. Acknowledging reality can be difficult, but it's from that point on that improvement and healing can begin. When we do come to that realization, we often feel whatever burden we were feeling removed from us and feel better afterwards, even if in the moment it's hard to vocalize, and even if it's only temporary. In Parshat Bo this week, we have a great example of this done on the part of none other than Pharaoh's courtiers. Egypt is in the midst of experiencing the 10 plagues. So far, they've endured the Nile turning to blood, an overabundance of frogs, itchy lice, wild animals run amok, cattle disease, painful boils, and hail that turns to fire as it strikes the ground. Moses repeatedly returns to Pharaoh, asking him to let the people go. But Pharaoh continues to refuse, even as his subjects suffer greatly. In our Parsha, Moses comes before Pharaoh and threatens the 8th plague, swarms of locusts that will eat everything in sight, including all the vegetation that was not previously destroyed by the hail. Pharaoh, true to form, offers to only let the Israelite men go and not the entire nation, which is not the agreement that Moses is seeking. Before the locusts are brought upon the land, Pharaoh's courtiers become incredulous. The Torah states in chapter 10, verse 7, "Vayomru avdei paro alav, ad matai yihiyeh zeh lanu l'mokesh, shalach et anashim v'yavdu et Hashem Elohechem." Pharaoh's courtiers said to him, "How long shall this be a snare to us? Let the men go worship the Lord their God." And then, amazingly, in the same verse, they exclaim, "Haterem tedar ki avda Mitzrayim." Are you not yet aware that Egypt is lost? You can almost picture them pulling their hair out, imploring Pharaoh to put an end to their misery and accept that it's in everyone's best interest if the Israelites go free. Although the Egyptians are in for 3 more incredibly severe plagues, I can imagine that at the time it must have at least provided some partial relief for Pharaoh's courtiers to be so outspoken. It must have felt good for at least a few moments to have basically said to Pharaoh, "The jig is up," and then surely hoping that Pharaoh would come to his senses sooner rather than later. There are earlier foreshadowings of this in the Torah. After Moses turns the Nile to blood and brings frogs upon the land, Pharaoh's magicians replicate the same actions, as if to say, "Your God isn't special. This is nothing that we can't bring about ourselves." But after the 3rd plague of lice, the Egyptians are unable to replicate it. They grow scared and exclaim, "It's the finger of God doing this," before placing the blame on Pharaoh. They acknowledge that they are powerless, while also speaking truth to power, which can be no easy task. It's cathartic to unburden ourselves, especially at this time when self-care and mental health are of the utmost importance. But at the same time, it can be hard to do. It can be hard to admit to yourself, "I need a day off. I should take a walk, get away from my desk for an hour." Or perhaps more pertinently, we need to change plans. We need to go back to Zoom services. We won't be going back to the office so soon. So what do? We acknowledge the truth of the situation plainly and name both our frustration and our hope. At the same time, we manifest this hope by prioritizing our mental and physical health, even while we acknowledge and accept that the world is as it is. We go for that walk, take that day off, while acknowledging that afterwards we'll have to get back doing the best we can. We've been here before. Let us hope that however long it lasts, it's only temporary, and there are better days ahead. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Ben, for doing a great job with with this week's Torah portion and for teaching us all a little bit about the importance of speaking truth to power, as well as accepting the world as it is. So we've got a lot to think about thanks to your leadership, and we are now going to continue our service with the Aleinu on page 586. Please rise and body our spirit.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Please be seated.
Please join me at the top of page 588.
שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב
בתורתו, וידעת היום והשיבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת. Ein od. And please turn to page 591 and join me on our version of Bayom Hahu, V'ne'emar. V'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz. Bayom Hahu, yihye Adonai, אחד ושמו אחד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, אחד ושמו אחד, אחד ושמו אחד.
The introduction to the Kaddish prayer, the prayer for those who have died, is on page 599. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We recall those who died during this past week: David Schwartz, and we add to his name the names of those whose yahrzeits or anniversary of whose deaths occur this week. Sheila Rosenberg, Muriel Kasanov, Tilly O'Day, Peter Gordon Stanley, Linda Fanger Jugganen, Phyllis K. Stone, Louis Rittenberg, Rose Rittenberg, Geraldine Ciotti, Stuart Ward. And we also think of all of those hundreds of thousands who have died in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we think of the millions who have died, over 1 million who have died of COVID since the start of the pandemic. And at this time, if there are names of individuals you would like to keep in your heart or your mind, you may say their names at this moment. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. We rise now in body or spirit as we continue with the Kaddish prayer on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who created harmony on high bring peace to us, to our country, to all Israel and all the world, as we say together, Amen. Amen. You may be seated. Now we're going to continue with the Kaddish on page 122 and 123. Please rise.
The heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodesho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reheshit, ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh, zeker litziat mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, v'yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'yahava uvratzon, inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Symbolic L'chaim.
L'chaim.
They didn't even give you any wine.
No, I'm just not that important. No.
And now, the motzi.
Ooh, nice.
Individually wrapped pieces of
Wow,
Torah.
very nice.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
You may be seated. And Ben, while you were busy singing, Alistair and I decided on the closing song.
Oh, very good.
Ein Keloheinu.
All right.
Which, what,
Page 626.
626.
Yeah, all right.
I think we're doing the newer upbeat version, right?
Yeah.
Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Eloheinu, en Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu, mi Eloheinu, mi Kadonenu, mi Kemalkeinu, mi Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu. No de Eloheinu, no de Ladonenu, no de Lemalkeinu, no de Lemoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu, en Eloheinu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkeinu, en Kamoshienu.
So I'd would like to thank all of those who participated in our service this evening. I'd like to thank Alistair for doing a great job of singing with Ben. I'd like to thank Ben, and then the other Ben, we call them Ben S and Ben E. So thanks to the Bens and Alistair, and I wanted to wish you and your family and your loved ones and all of us a Shabbat Shalom.